Hello and welcome to my channel. This is the reading of In His Shadow, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, My Hero Academia crossover. It's by Flightsoffiction on AO3. Summary is as follows. The 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle boys are reeling from the loss of their master and just recently dealing with the new world they had to create. These two events have the boys feeling a sense of total discombobulation, and in that fugue state, they decide something crazy. They already know alternate universes exist from the Krang portals. Therefore, there must be a universe where their master is still alive. Donnie is obsessed, builds a viewing machine, and they find many worlds. One, the 80s world, the world where Splinter was Sliver and evil, the world where he died, but the one they focus on most is 03 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. For one reason, when they tune in is when Splinter is injured, and they see him more as he is recovering, meditating in front of a picture of who else but Master Yoshi. It must be fate. Chapter 1. Under His Shadow. Leonardo moved like a ghost through the lair. It wasn't fair. After everything they had done, after every battle, every near apocalypse, every sacrifice, the cost had still been their father. There had been times Leo wondered if Splinter saw them more as students than sons. The times he had resented the endless drills, the impossible standards, the barked corrections whenever his stance slipped, or his focus wandered. But grief had a cruel way of sanding memory down to truth. He remembered storms. He remembered tiny hands clutching at ropes while thunder shook the tunnels overhead. He remembered Splinter stroking their shells until they stopped trembling. He remembered being carried half asleep back to bed after meditation. He remembered warm tea, careful lectures, quiet pride hidden beneath sternness. And what else had Splinter been supposed to do? They were mutants, monsters in the eyes of most humans. If Splinter had not trained them the way he had, they would all be dead 10 times over. Leo wished he had said it more often. I love you, even when you're strict. His swords felt too heavy in his bleeding hands. His muscles screamed every time he raised them again. But he could not stop, because now he understood the price of weakness. Not being enough had killed their father, and Leo would never let anyone pay that price again. Not Raphael, not Donnie, not Mikey, not even Karai. The thought made him falter. Karai. Would Splinter have forgiven her? Welcomed her despite everything? Leo didn't know anymore. He didn't know anything except that he wanted his father back so badly it hollowed him out from the inside. He wanted to hear that sharp, clipped, Hajime! He wanted correction, because correction meant structure. Structure meant control, and control meant no one else had to die. But the echo never came, and never would again. Leo lowered his swords with a tired sigh, and went looking for his brothers. Raphael was in the gym, brutalizing the punching bag like he could beat death itself into submission if he just hit hard enough. Leo heard the occasional sharp inhale, the wet hitch of suppressed crying, but pretended not to notice. Mikey sat in the common room with Ice Cream Kitty curled in his lap. The cat purred softly while Mikey stared blankly at melted ice cream dripping over his fingers. Every few seconds his eyes drifted toward Splinter's empty room before darting away again. That hurt worse somehow. Michelangelo's joy had always filled the lair like sunlight. Now it was gone. Leo moved on before he had to look at it any longer. Donnie hadn't left the lab in days. None of them were okay. They were all coping like shattered things, pretending to still be whole. It would have been easier if there had been a body, ashes, something to bury, something to carry back to Japan so Splinter's spirit wouldn't wander endlessly through a foreign land. But Oroku Saki had taken even that from them. The lair itself felt wrong now. too quiet, too empty. No one sat beneath the little tree anymore, because that had been Splinter's meditation spot. No one looked too long at the family photo hanging near the dojo, because now only one person in it still lived. And in his darkest moments, Leo thought it should have been Splinter who lived instead. He finally pushed the lab door open. At least he could make sure Donnie had eaten. Being the eldest still mattered. Being leader still mattered. Even if he felt like a fraud wearing the title now. Splinter would have wanted him to take care of his brothers. The lab hummed softly with machinery and sleepless obsession. Donatello hunched over blueprints, while old Crane portal schematics scrolled endlessly across a dozen monitors. Purple light reflected in the dark circles under his eyes. "They showed us other worlds," Donnie whispered without looking up. "When the Krang were jumping dimensions, remember?" Leo stiffened. He remembered. Worlds full of different versions of themselves. Silly worlds, broken worlds, dark worlds. "What if," Donnie said carefully, "there's one there where he's still alive?" Leo closed his eyes briefly. "Donnie, what if we could just see him again?" The desperation in his voice was unbearable. "Why would you even entertain this?" Leo asked quietly. "It'll only hurt more." But even as he said it, some awful selfish part of him wanted Donnie to succeed. Because if there really was another Splinter out there, even one that wasn't theirs, Leo still wanted to hear his voice one more time. Wanted to say goodbye. Wanted to confess, "I'm sorry, I wasn't good enough." April tried to help. She came by with tea and awkward sympathy and soft eyes full of grief. "This isn't healthy," she told them gently. "I miss him too. Maybe you should hold a funeral?" Leo had agreed at first, but no one could settle on a date. Donnie barely acknowledged the idea. Raphael refused to talk about it. Mikey cried the first time they tried. After a week, Leo quietly asked April to stop bringing it up. A funeral meant accepting Splinter was gone, and none of them could survive that yet. By the second week, Donnie finally called him into the lab. A low hum vibrated through the floor. Thin violet light shimmered across the far wall. Not a true portal yet, but a viewing window. Leo secretly felt relieved. A portal would have made this too real. Donnie handed him a modified remote built from salvaged Krang technology. "I can tune into dimensional frequencies," he explained. "We can observe without interacting." Mikey and Raph gathered behind them as Donnie cycled through glimpses of other realities. Different turtles, different worlds, different lives. Then the image stabilized, and all four of them froze. A rat mutant sat curled against a human man on a battered couch. Splinter. Not theirs, but close enough that Leo's breath caught painfully in his throat. Only something was terribly wrong. This Splinter wore a thin summer dress that exposed too much fur along his shoulders and collarbones. His posture was strangely soft, folded inward with exhausted submission rather than dignity. His fur looked overly groomed in places, and uneven in others, as though someone else had been caring for him. And his eyes, God, his eyes looked empty. Not dead, not emotionless, broken. The human beside him, pale and twitchy, had his fingers buried possessively in Splinter's fur, while dozens of rats swarmed the room around them. The man smiled with feverish devotion. Splinter leaned instinctively into the touch. Like a trained animal, like something conditioned. Leo's stomach twisted. He felt his hands start to shake. Mikey's breathing was ragged behind him. "What the shell?" Raphael whispered, voice unsteady. Then they heard it. "I love you, Rex," that Splinter said softly. Not willingly. Leo knew that instantly. There was no warmth in the words, only exhausted compliance. The kind born from someone who had been pushed until resistance no longer felt possible, and the human, Rex, lit up with a manic delight at hearing it. The screen flickered briefly through distorted images. That Splinter being brushed while staring vacantly ahead. A nursery filled with rats. That Splinter sitting perfectly still while Rex adjusted the straps of the dress on his shoulders. A flute resting beside Rex like a secret object. That Splinter flinching at a note they couldn't hear through the monitor. That his body twitching as if the sound pulled at his very nerves. For just a second, the facade cracked. That Splinter's eyes flattened. His expression twisted in horror, and in a raw, shaking voice that sounded nothing like the calm master they knew, he whispered, "My sons?" The screen went black. A beat of stunned silence. Mikey's hand flew to his mouth as he doubled over and retched, barely containing himself on the back of Donnie's chair. Raph punched the nearest wall so hard the drywall fractured, blood already starting to bead on his knuckles. "Turn it off!" Leo snapped, voice breaking. Johnny fumbled, immediately killing the feed, his hand shaking so badly he nearly dropped the remote. Silence slammed into the room. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Only the faint hum of Donnie's machines and Mikey's muffled sobbing broke the stillness. "That wasn't love," Donnie said finally, voice hollow. "That was conditioning." Nobody argued, because they all had seen it. The too careful obedience, the exhaustion, the instinctive fear whenever the flute had appeared. Whatever that version of Splinter had endured, it had hollowed him out and rebuilt him into something dependent and trapped. Leo stared at the blank screen, his own reflection ghostly in the dark glass. For a moment, he wondered if somewhere else there was a version of himself just as lost, just as broken. And somehow, that made it worse, because even across dimensions, Splinter still suffered for everyone else. Leo swallowed hard. "Maybe," he said carefully, "we should stop." Donnie whipped around so fast, his chair nearly toppled over. "No." "Donnie, I can't stop." His voice cracked violently. "I just want to see him again. Just once. I want him to tell me to go to sleep. I want him to call me ridiculous for forgetting to eat. I want..." He broke off hard, scrubbing furiously at his eyes. Leo's chest ached, because he understood. God help him, he understood perfectly. After a long silence, Leo sat beside him. He looked at his brothers, Mikey still trembling, Raph cradling his bloody fist. Donnie hunched in on himself, and knew that even if he wanted to quit, they needed hope. They needed him to be strong. "One bad world doesn't mean they're all like that," he said quietly. Raphael frowned but didn't argue. Mikey swallowed hard and nodded weakly, wiping his mouth on the back of his hand. Leo looked back at the dead screen, and the last lingering image burned into his mind. A Splinter who looked loved and utterly destroyed at the same time. And somehow that terrified him more than any monster ever had. "We keep looking," Leo decided softly. Donnie exhaled shakily, some faint hope sparking in tired eyes. And somewhere, far away, in another broken world, a hypnotized rat mutant curled against a man named Rex and dreamed of sons he could no longer fully remember. And that's the end of Chapter 1. There's a note that the source material is from archive.org/chapters/77322343991. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.